Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So today I'm going to be reviewing the Isle of Dread. This is going to be a long video because I have a lot to say, there's a lot to cover, but there are timestamps in the description below if you want to jump around to different topics. Alright, so the Isle of Dread. The Isle of Dread is DDO's 7th expansion. It was released on June 22nd, 2022. It is based on the classic module of the same name from Pen and Paper D&D. It contains one wilderness area, 12 quests, and one raid. The raid is not yet released as of the recording of this video. We'll talk about that a little more later in the video. The expansion contains a new race, Tabaxi. In this review, I'm not going to talk about that because I've done a whole video about that already. I'll put a link in the description for that video if you want to check out my review discussion of Tabaxi. The Isle of Dread is prehistoric themed. It's a mysterious disappearing island. You'll be fighting dinosaurs, a lot of different types of dinosaurs. You'll be dealing with the new main villain of Vecna. In addition to many types of dinosaurs, there's been a lot of new monsters added. So some of these include the Kopru and the Ettercaps, in addition to all the new dinosaurs we're encountering as well. The quests that are in this expansion are level 7 heroic and 33 legendary, except for the final quest, which is level 8 heroic and level 34 legendary. My review, though, is going to be focused mainly on the legendary version, not so much the heroic version. This expansion also included a level cap increase to level 32, but you don't have to own the expansion in order to reach the new levels. The expansion includes both standard loot drops and craftable loot. We'll talk a lot about that a little bit later in the video. The expansion is offered in 3 different bundles that cost $40, $80, or $130. I did a whole video discussing these different bundles. I'll also put a link to that video in the description if you want to check that out. One other thing I want to mention for transparency reasons, even though it will not affect my review at all, is that I was gifted an Ultimate Fan Bundle version of the Isle of Dread by Standing Stone Games. So with that said, let's start by going briefly through each of the 12 quests. The first quest in the expansion is called Captive of the Hidden God. It's basically an intro quest. In this quest, you wake up on the beach on the Isle of Dread. This quest is a flashback which explains how you got to the Isle of Dread. There's some references to characters that we've seen before, like Jeets and Korthos, which is where DDO began, which I really like that. That was a very nice touch. In this quest, we are introduced to Vecna, who is revealed to have been the mysterious stranger from the Feywild. If you played the Feywild expansion, you'll know what I'm talking about. This quest explains how you came to be trapped on the Isle of Dread by Vecna. The quest is mostly story. It's a very story-focused quest. It's also quite short. There's not a lot of enemies. There's not a lot of encounters. And it takes place on a boat mostly. Some positives about this quest: it looks great. Some of the ocean scenes, Vecna in particular, looks amazing. And there's a part in this quest with red hands that kind of show up and pop up. It's probably one of the creepiest scenes in DDO, I would say. That's all there is to say really for the intro. Very short, mostly just story introduction to the expansion. Okay, next we'll move on to the first chain. The first chain of quests are quests for a hunter's guild. It's a guild that needs help with dinosaurs and the Kopru. So quest number 2 in the expansion and number 1 in the chain is called Wild Thing. In this quest, you need to help with a rampaging, angry ankylosaurus that's terrorizing a farm. Very short quest. Like a lot of these, you'll see this is a theme throughout the expansion. Most of these quests are very short. There are some, in this quest in particular, there's some walk-up explorer points for an optional. There's the Ankylosaurus boss at the end, obviously. Not a whole lot else to say really about this quest. Very short, kind of do the Explorer optionals if you want, and then kind of just run to the end and kill the Ankylosaurus. There's some optionals as well along the way, like there are in a lot of these quests. I'm not going to mention every optional as I go through these quests, but you'll see a theme in these quests. There's a lot of areas where you can go and there's a path where you can have an optional path and do an additional encounter for an optional. Sometimes that will include an extra chest which will drop crafting ingredients. Sometimes you'll have a hidden door that will go to an optional. No hidden doors in this quest, but there is a optional encounter. The next quest is called the Stone Crypt Chronicle. In this quest, you need to help retrieve an ancient tome that was stolen from the hunters by the Kopru. It's a small but open map, The map almost reminds me of, say, like a map out of like the game Turok. It's one of the very few quests that isn't completely linear. You can actually get three crests, which are required to be collected in this quest. You can collect them in any order you like, so it's not linear in that way. So you can kind of explore as you want. There's also an optional egg finding objective, so if you want to, you can look around for some eggs that were hidden around the map. Other than that, you go find the three crests that are in three different little areas, and then you apply them to the main door to get to the end fight. Not a lot really to say about this quest other than that, but I do like that it's a little bit less linear than the others. This is one of, as I said before, one of the few non-linear quests in the pack. The next quest is called All Hail the King referring to a T-Rex. So in this quest, a T-Rex called Saima is causing havoc, and you need to deal with it. And you can see the T-Rex as you are kind of progressing this quest. You can see the T-Rex in the distance, which is a nice touch. There are a few optionals that are underwater optionals here, so there's a little bit of swimming in this quest. Not a lot, but a little bit of swimming. I will say one thing that's really cool about this quest, it's probably visually the best looking in terms of the water in particular. I think the water is very, very pretty in this quest, and it shows just how far DDO's come in terms of visuals, just how good some of the newer stuff can look, considering this is a game from 2006, how good some of this stuff can look compared to what we saw back in content from 2006. So it's pretty freaking awesome what they've done with some of the visuals, not just the dinosaurs, but the water here. So you obviously in this quest, you have a T-Rex in fight, which is really neat. We'll talk a little bit more about the T-Rex and some other monsters later, but it's a very cool looking encounter. I mean, fighting a giant T-Rex in DDO is just something awesome to partake in. Okay, next we are going to move on to a quest called Trials of the Triceratops. In this quest, a hunting party has gone missing, likely taken by a group of marauders, and they have a druid leader that is manipulating dinosaurs. You need to go basically rescue the prisoners and deal with this druid. It's a very linear, medium-sized quest. As I said before in the story, you need to free some prisoners, you need to defeat the druid. This druid, in the end fight, you fight not just the druid, but some dinosaurs they're manipulating, as the name of the quest would entail. One of these is a Triceratops. So the Triceratops, we'll talk a little bit more about the mechanics from that monster in a bit, but it has a pretty cool stomp mechanic that you can kind of have to pay attention to, at least on a melee. Okay, that's it for the first chain. So moving on to chain number 2, which is called the Curse of the Kopru. This chain revolves around gaining access to the Forbidden Kopru Temple in order to escape from the Isle of Dread. There are 3 monoliths to attune to in order to help you accomplish this goal. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the capstone quest, because it plays a vital role in that quest, this attunement to these monoliths. Okay, so quest number 6, or the first in this chain number 2, is called Curse of the Captive Crustacean. In this quest, you go to Crab Island to find the first monolith to attune to. And this is an island ruled by the Kopru. The monolith is protected by a giant crab that's imbued with Kopru magic. It's a very short quest. This one, just again, like all of these quests, for the most part, are short. The mechanic is the only mechanic really in this pack that made me, as I was going through these quests for the first time, it was really the only quest that made me think a little bit to figure out exactly how this mechanic works. Most of the quests in this expansion, almost all of them, are pretty much like simple quests. You run through, kill stuff, go to the end, kill the boss, not too much thinking involved. But this one, I actually had to learn a bit how to do the mechanic, because there's a mechanic that involves doing some very simple tile puzzles in order to load some ballistas that you have to fire at the crab at the correct moment. So a little bit to learn here in terms of mechanics. When you run this for the first time, I would advise entering at a lower, easy difficulty, just to learn the mechanic before you try this on the higher difficulties, because there's some respawning trash that will try to prevent you from doing the tile puzzles to load the ballista and shoot at the crab. So it can get a little frustrating if you play this on like a high difficulty before you learn the mechanic. I will say that the mechanic, again, I like quests like this that make you think a little bit. So Yeah, good quest. Not too much else to say. Very short quest other than that. There's also an optional in this quest, an optional dinosaur, kind of the back of this island that you can fight. And this optional dinosaurs, he moves unlike most other dinosaurs that I found in this pack. He's a push mob, so he will be constantly jumping away from you. So you might like or hate that mechanic. It can be a little bit annoying to deal with on a melee because he's constantly jumping side to side. But in any case, that's really the only other notable thing about this quest. Other than that, pretty short, not too much to say. All right. Quest number 7, or quest number 2 in this chain number 2, is called Plundering Pirate's Point. In this quest, you need to find the next monolith, which is protected by pirates in a cove fortress. Visually, this is quite cool. It's one of the quests in here that, even though it is like the other quests, super simple in terms of the quest design and dungeon layout, it's visually quite cool because you start in this cove with this cool dock, and it also has this purple water, which is like insta-kill water, at least until you you can dispel that later. But essentially, you start in this dock beach area, and then it progresses to where you're then fighting inside this building, and then that progresses into almost this reddish colored area, which is almost reminiscent of, say, for me at least, the first thing I thought of when I entered kind of the later part of this quest was Doom. It's red. It feels like a Doom level almost. But basically, you need to destroy some totems as an optional also in the dock area if you'd like. If you have, say, like UMD, or I think Spellcraft is the other check, you can destroy the totems without having to fight a monster that will spawn from them. But yeah, I like this quest a lot. It still has the very simple design, but the progression as you go through it makes it feel more like an adventure because you're actually going through different environments. And it feels like you're progressing once you get to the end and find the monolith. So yeah, very cool quest, visually quite good as well. Quest number 8 in this expansion, which is quest number 3, I believe we're up to in this chain, is called Bullywugs and Booby Traps. The third monolith in this quest is in a Kopru ruin, which is guarded by Bullywugs, and they now work for the Kopru, these Bullywugs. So as the name would suggest, there are many bullywugs and many booby traps. This is the trap quest of the expansion. Lots and lots of traps. Having a trapper in here helps a lot. Not required. You can get around all the traps and jump around them, but it's nice to have a rogue or artificer that can do traps here. So there's some breakable floors. There's some wheel puzzles in here as well. But other than that, not much to say. Just do a lot of traps, do some wheel puzzles. That's pretty much it. Watch out for breakable floors as well. They can lead to some dangers. All right, so the capstone quest for the expansion is called Fall of the Forbidden Temple, and it has a very specific mechanic that we need to talk about. So in this quest, after you've attuned to all 3 monoliths, you need to assault the main Kopru temple in order to escape from the Isle of Dread. That's what this quest revolves around. So the 3 monoliths that you attune to grant you the ability to debuff 3 curses, which you get automatically once you enter the quest. So you do not have to debuff these curses. And some of them, I think 2 of them are pretty severe. They basically can cause some auto fail. There's one that on healing spells and such. There's one that causes a blade to appear above your character's head and does massive damage, especially on the higher difficulties. It'll just one-shot you. It'll appear every so often. So that's 2 of them. I forget the third one. I think it's mainly has to do with you take additional damage in certain situations. But in any case, you can choose to, if you would like, remove all of these 3 debuffs. If you do that, it obviously makes the quest easier and you get 1 in chest. However, if you don't want to remove any of the debuffs, you don't have to, or you can remove 1 of them or 2 of them if you would like. And for every one you don't remove, you get an extra in chest. So that's your incentive to not remove the debuffs. So it can be more challenging or less challenging just depending on if you'd like to. Now, in order to remove the debuffs, you would have to attune to the monoliths in the prior quest. So you will need to have run the 3 prior quests to do that. And when you do remove a debuff, you lose that attunement. So you will need to rerun the quest to reattain that attunement to remove that debuff again, should you want to rerun the temple. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to reflag. This is not a reflagging required mechanic. It's just it makes the quest easier if you do want to reflag and run the prior 3 quests again. Again, you don't have to. You can run this quest without removing any of the curses, if you would like to. So it's kind of up to you how much challenge you want. Do you want more challenge and more loot as a reward, or do you want to just have the easier completion where you just remove all 3 of the debuffs? It's up to you. But it's a really nice, interesting mechanic. There's never been something quite like that before. It's not really reflagging, but it sort of is in a way. So it's kind of a semi-reflagging mechanic. So anyways, interesting mechanic. This is probably the longest quest in the expansion, but honestly, it's not really any more complicated, I would say, than any other quest. It's still a very straightforward quest where you need to, go in a linear path, kill all the enemies. There's a few traps, couple minor, easy crest collection sections. Other than that, you go to the end fight, you kill a Kopru, and you'll see the ending there with Vecna that wraps up the whole story. All right, now let's get into the 3 side quests. So the first one is called Spiders and Flies. So in this quest, pixies have become trapped on the island, and their village is being raided by ettercaps. Some pixies have been captured, and they need your help. So this quest takes place in a tree. It's very reminiscent of the Feywild quest, Combating Corruption. It's kind of almost like the opposite of that quest, because in Combating Corruption from the Feywild, you go in there to kind of clear out the rot from the tree, but in this one, you're going in the tree to get the pixies out. It's almost like an antithesis to that quest, I would say. At least that's how it felt to me. But there's an optional memory puzzle, the same memory puzzles we've seen plenty of times in DDO, but basically you can do the memory puzzle to get some spiders to not aggro, and you basically go in there. Once the spiders are not aggroed, you can rescue some birds. Not really a lot to that one. You basically just go in and click on the birds, but it's a little different optional than the standard just go kill a mini boss that we see many times throughout this pack. The objective for this quest is to find a required number of pixies, and once you do that, the quest is over. The next quest is called The Trouble with Tar Pits. So in this quest, the Tar Ogre tribe is creating elementals, and you need to deal with that. So there's a tablet collection optional here. We've seen a lot of that before. You can, at one point in this quest, choose to either go to a left path or go straight and jump over this tar that does some very small amounts of damage, and there's some appearing and disappearing platforms. Not really a big deal that they appear and disappear, just because if they disappear, you just drop into some tar, which doesn't really do a lot of damage. But hey, you can either go straight, jump on the platforms, or go left, where you can actually do an optional if you'd like to. So not a lot to say about this quest. Again, it's one of these, like most of these quests, very straightforward, short, go through a linear path, kill stuff. I will say that I think the enemies at the end look really cool. So the cosmetic effects different. There's a cosmetic effect to the enemy there that you don't see again throughout the expansion. Looks very cool. All right, the 12th and last quest we'll talk about is called Whispers of Return. In this quest, several members of the Sea Turtle clan have gone missing. It is feared they were captured and mentally manipulated by the Kopru. You need to find them and rescue them. Another tablet collection optional here. You need to pull 2 levers to open the end fight. There's really not much else to say. There's a Kopru boss at the end. That's about it. Really nothing to say about this one. It's a very short, straightforward quest. Let's now talk a bit about monster design and some notable monsters from the pack and some notable mechanics. So this is not covering all the monsters and every mechanic. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just some notable ones I wanted to mention. So the T-Rexes from the pack, the Tyrannosaurus Rexes, they look awesome. They have a mechanic, specific combat mechanics that are a little bit new. So they trip. They have their special thing is this chomp attack they do, which does minus 20% fort and around, I don't know the exact percentage, but around like minus 8% or so HP in this. These stack up to 5 stacks. So they kind of have an inherent debuff. So yeah, and they look cool. They do this cool roar. So it's really nice when you're taking on these T-Rexes. It's quite challenging and it's fun. It's good. They did a good job with that. The Triceratops in this pack, they do this cool slam attack that you can visually avoid, so you can see marks of it on the ground also that appear kind of like the circles appear, kind of like the maybe the Master of the Hunts and the Hunter and Hunted raid, but it's smaller. There's like a little two parallel lines you have to kind of avoid, but those are a little bit easier. I found that you can just see that coming and you go around the back and just, hit their tail or whatever. It's a good way to fight them. The Ettercaps in the pack do some really nasty poison damage, so look out for those. But the most dangerous of the new monsters has to be the Kopru, and they made quite a lot of noise around the community and the forums. They are definitely the most dangerous. Their feature, their really prime feature is this slow-moving sphere attack they do, which these spheres, people around the community that I've seen, at least I've played with, have been calling them balls of death, but they shoot these spheres that are very slow-moving projectiles that do massive chaotic damage. So be on the lookout for those. They are really, really nasty. They just will mess you up with their spells. So watch out for those. I will say I really do love the monster design. Not only do they look really cool, but they've added some really new in-string mechanics and challenges. They did an excellent job, and these just look great. Good job, devs. Let's talk about the wilderness area now. The wilderness area is fairly large. I would say about the same size as Feywild's, perhaps slightly bigger. It contains both walk-up explorers and clickable explorers, so those are the scrolls that you click on. It contains normal rare encounters and also more rare purple named boss encounters, which I've been calling tough rares. I don't know exactly what you want to call them, but these are purple named mobs that are much tougher than regular rares. And at least two of the three, there are three of them in the wilderness area. Two of the three have lots and lots of HP. The dragon that does spawn here, the purple named dragon, is definitely the toughest of the three, and you may need a couple friends to help you take it down. The rare chests drop crafting materials and can drop name loot as well. Some of the runs to the quests are long here, but there are a variety of teleport locations you can unlock by completing the quest. So the first time you'll need to run to them, but after that you can often have a very convenient teleport to the quests. Also, you don't have to run the quests in the pack in order. What I've been doing is going into the wilderness area and kind of just running around clockwise in a circle and doing all of them as I go through, kind of like I do with Salt Marsh. And that's probably how most people will run this pack when they do the full saga. The runs to the quests are similar to Salt Marsh and Feywild in that they're all straightforward paths. There's no learning curve present. To get there, say such in wilderness areas like the Cogs from the Sharn expansion, or say like the Demon Web from the Mo2 expansion, they're all just straight shots. You won't get lost. You won't get, run into unpassable barriers trying to get to quests. Now back to the tough rares, the purple names, as I'm going to call them, tough rares. It was a really good idea to put those in the wilderness area because the wilderness areas throughout DDO have always lacked challenge, and this adds a little bit more challenge to them. Not that they're super challenging, they're not really, but they can be, particularly the dragon. You may need more than one person to help you take them down, and they do have a lot of HP, at least two of the three. But it's just really nice to have mobs in a wilderness area that are not complete pushovers. There's also ingredients needed to craft the loot in this pack. One is called Tyrannosaurus Teeth that only drops in the wilderness area rare chest, which is a compelling reason to farm the wilderness area chest for rares. It also appears on the saga list, by the way, but does not drop in the regular quest chests. The purple named tough rares you are incentivized to farm because they have a chance to drop black pearls, which is a crafting ingredient that's only otherwise found in the raid. So you may want to farm out those purple rares if you're not someone who's raiding. That will be the better way. You're really your only option to get those black pearls, which are required to craft certain things. Overall, I really like the wilderness area. Visually, it's not as stunning as, say, Ravenlofts or the Stormhorns, but I think the drop mechanics and the incentives to engage in it, plus the purple name tough rares make it among the best wilderness areas in the game. Definitely probably the most interesting wilderness area in the game because there's actually a lot of replay value here, and it also strikes an excellent balance between immersion and convenience, which I think is going to make it so no player is really upset. It doesn't go as far as Ravenloft where you have direct teleportation to each quest, but it's not, say, like the Desert Sands either, where you have to do these long runs to all the quests. So I think all players, whether you're looking for immersion or you're looking for just convenience, are going to be happy with this. So it strikes a really good balance. Let's talk briefly about the raid. It's not released yet as of the recording of this video. I did jump in on solo over on the first Lamania preview, and here's some footage of that you're watching right now. I didn't complete the raid, but I was able to go in and look at it a bit. I'm planning to do a separate video on the raid once it's out, and I've had the chance to run it a bunch and learn all the mechanics and ins and outs of the raid. But all I can say right now about it is the music is hype. Visually, what I've seen looks awesome, but the jury is still out as I have yet to complete or understand its mechanics. So if you want to give me a YouTube sub, if you're not subbed already, sub to the channel. Be on the lookout for that video, which I'll definitely plan on doing in the future. All right, next let's talk about the public area. So the public area is really nice. In my opinion, the best of the expansions since Menace of the Underdark. They spent some time populating the island with NPCs. If you talk to them, they'll give you a little more about the story. They'll give you some tidbits to read, and you'll learn a little bit more about the lore and the storyline. There's a lot of really neat touches around the island that add to the immersion and atmosphere. I really like the big gate to the wilderness area zone. It's very reminiscent of the large gates in films like the original King Kong and Jurassic Park, and I'm sure that's on purpose. The public area is fairly large, and it's about the same size as Evening Star, so there's some nooks and crannies to look at here. There's some fantastic views, by the way, off on the shoreline. The NPC quest givers and saga givers are all located next to each other in the center of the village. Not the biggest fan of that personally, as I've commented in previous expansions. I think it's a little bit lacking in the immersion factor, but it is convenient. Some people will really like that they're all there for convenience right there in the middle. All right, now we need to get into loot and crafting. So there is a lot to discuss in terms of loot and crafting. So as I said before, the loot is a mix of standard named loot drops and craftable loot. You can craft weapon blanks of any weapon type at the vendor in the public area. You can also find drops of these named weapons in the wilderness chests, so there's multiple ways to get them. There are craftable minor artifacts that drop in quest chests. These are minor artifacts with 4 crafting slots on them. There's a variety of other loot in the pack that contains different levels of crafting slots. So a lot of the other named loot will contain say 1 crafting slot. The minor artifacts are the really craftable things in the pack, along with the blank weapons that you can craft or collect from the wilderness chest that contain lots of 4 different craftable slots. There are also a variety of different set bonuses, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. The crafting system itself is very similar to Legendary Green Steel, except with much simpler crafting recipes. There's some ingredients that are found in Wilderness only, some ingredients that are found in the Tough Rares only, some ingredients that are only found in quest chests, and we don't know yet for the raid because it's not out yet, but we know at least there is one ingredient, which is Black Pearls, that drops only in the raid and in the purple named rare chest. So you're incentivized in this way to go and do a variety of things in the expansion to farm out enough ingredients to craft your loot. You can also get loot on the Saga reward list. You have a chance of 25 ingredients of any type as a Saga reward, so that's any of the main ingredients, but I don't think Black Pearls are included on the Saga list. Of the 5 sagas I've run so far, I've yet to see them on there, so I believe you have to get those either from the purple rares or the raid. So the Isle of Dread augments that you can craft, they vary quite a bit in terms of costs, so I would advise you to either look on the wiki, or if it's on there, or go to the vendor in the Isle of Dread to get a look at all those costs. So far in 4 runs of the saga, taking Tyrannosaurus teeth so far, I have about 150 of each ingredient except for Black Pearls. I've actually run it 5 times, but as of the 4th run of the saga, I've had about 150 of each ingredient. The augments that you buy from the vendor cost 25, 50, or 100 of each ingredient or so. So the system itself is a bit grindy, but that could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on if you want to stay at endgame or not. It's good for people who want to stay at endgame and have something to do, but it's not nearly as easy to get this stuff upgraded and crafted as, say, like Salt Marsh loot was. When it comes to the crafting, you can unslot the various augments that you will purchase and put into your loot. So you can unslot them with Jeweler's Toolkits or a rare drop called a Bone Picker, which is an Isle of Dread loot only Jeweler's Toolkit essentially. So it's just basically a Jeweler's Toolkit that only works on the Isle of Dread augments. Bone Pickers also have a chance to drop on the Saga list. Of the 5 runs of the Saga I've done as of the recording of this video, I've seen it once on the list. I don't know what the percentage chance is. I'm not saying it's 1 in 5. I could have just been unlucky, or I could have been lucky and maybe it only drops 1 in 10. I have no idea what the percentage is, but there is a chance to drop on the Saga list. You can also destroy augments if you wish by slotting another Isle of Dread augment in its place. Considering how expensive the Jeweler's Toolkits are in the DDO store and how rarely they drop in other parts of the game, I would have liked to see Bone Pickers offered as a guaranteed Saga reward. There are only a chance for them to appear on the Saga reward list, as I've said before, but at least you can optionally grind out ingredients and just destroy the augment if you like. So overall, I will say, though, I really like the crafting system here. It gives us something to do at endgame, and it's at a point where the gear is, and I'll get into this in a minute, where it's competitive with other gear. So if you don't want to like do super grind crafting stuff or the dinosaur crafting, you don't have to. You can also just slot named items, and they'll have 1 slot, which is really not that big of a deal to slot 1 thing. The loot here in the pack, another notable thing is that it does rise above minimum level 30. So as I said before, this expansion does include a level cap increase to 32. And we are seeing a small power jump here as a result. The gear is a higher minimum level, though. It's minimum level 31 loot. But it's just a very small baby step power jump. So for example, the regular gear here is stat plus 14. So like Wiz plus 14, strength plus 14, and minimum level 31, whereas the minimum level 29 gear, which is most of the gear in places like Sharn and Feywild, for example, that's stat plus 13 on regular loot, with minimum level 29 minor artifacts in these prior expansions being both stat plus 14. So a little bit of difference there, like a little bit of power creep in that to get the same stat bonuses that were on minor artifacts. Minimum level 29 you can get on regular loot in Isle of Dread at minimum level 31. Isle of Dread also has a variety of 3-piece and 5-piece set bonuses, which give bonuses fairly comparable to, say, like Sharn, Feywild, and Saltmarsh sets. This isn't a straight power jump when it comes to the set bonuses for the most part. Instead, the artifact bonuses are rather comparable, also the profane. So for example, here is the 3-piece Sharn Legendary Part of the Family set versus the 3-piece Isle of Dread Stalker set. These are all artifact bonuses, by the way. So the Legendary Part of the Family has plus 30% fortification bypass, plus 15 melee power, plus 15% double strike, plus 15% helpless damage. The Dread Stalker set from Isle of Dread does contain plus 3 sneak attack die, plus 15 melee range power, plus 15% double strike, double shot, plus 15% helpless damage. So that's an example of taking, say, Part of the Family, which is probably still by far the most popular in-game 3-piece set for melees in the game, is very comparable in terms of artifact bonuses that you can get from the set bonuses to the Isle of Dread loot. So we're not seeing like a power jump in terms of set bonuses. There's definitely a variety of them, and you may see set bonuses in Isle of Dread that are more beneficial to your character than prior set bonuses. But in terms of overall power level, it's roughly equivalent. It's not representing a straight power jump here. It's more just competitive loot rather than a big jump in terms of the set bonuses. Here's another comparison for you, just to give you an example of the power comparison here. Here's the 5-piece Ravenloft Adherent of the Mist set compared to the 5-piece Isle of Dread Isle's Curse set. These are all profane bonuses. So the Adherent of the Mist set gives plus 30 PRR, plus 30 positive negative repair amp, plus 15 melee range power, plus 15 universal spell power. The Dread Isle's Curse set has 5-piece set has plus 30 PRR, plus 2 spell DCs, plus 15 melee range power, plus 25 universal spell power, plus 3 hit and damage. So they're roughly comparable. It's competitive while not necessarily being like a straight power jump. A lot of these stats are the same, like the PRR, the melee range power, things. For example, the universal spell power is a little bit higher. But another thing to note about the Isle of Dread set bonuses, even though the set bonuses are roughly comparable, they are higher minimum level. So the loot here is minimum level 31, whereas say like the Ravenloft, the Sharn, the Feywild gears, for the most part is roughly around like level 29 minimum level. Also be aware, this is only to give you an idea, this is just 2 examples of many different set bonuses that all these expansions have. There are a bunch more Isle of Dread set bonuses I haven't mentioned here, so go to the wiki or just look at the name loot, the descriptions on the name loot you pick up, and look at the set bonuses. You may or may not find new stuff you want to slot on your character in this expansion. So overall, the loot here is very interesting, and there's tons of options and great flexibility here. Probably one of the best parts of this pack is the flexibility in the crafting. It's not a huge power jump, as I mentioned before. This isn't a situation where all previous loot is instantly outdated, kind of like when Sharn first came out. We were like, okay, let's get rid of everything else and let's all put on Sharn sets. It's not that type of situation. It's competitive loot, it's compelling loot, it's very flexible loot, but it's not necessarily going to outdate all the previous loot from the previous expansions. The devs did a good job of giving us kind of a baby step power increase where there is a little bit of a power increase in areas. So for example, like the main stat on regular gear now being equivalent to the minor artifact stats from the previous expansion, but it keeps all of the previous like raid gear, previous expansion sets, all that stuff is still very relevant and compelling and competitive. They didn't destroy the level 30 in-game, or that I was a bit concerned they would just destroy the level 30 in-game, but they didn't do that. I like the design a lot. I think it's great. I want to comment briefly on the music in this expansion. The music is fine. I will say I didn't notice it too much the first time I played through, just because this is not music in the vein of, say, an expansion like Feywild, to where there's a heavy, catchy chorus that you really can latch onto. It's more of background ambiance, again, just like Saltmarsh, which is fine. It's just not really a striking feature of the pack, nor were they probably wanting it to be. I will say, though, that I have heard the music in the raid, which I think is really cool. It's quite hype, but you'll hopefully experience that when the raid comes out. All right, let's get into now some of my criticisms with Isle of Dread. So I have similar criticisms with Isle of Dread as I did with Saltmarsh. The main criticism I have with the expansion is the overly safe, overly simple, and basic quest design. It feels like they did the minimum here, to be honest, in terms of the quest design, the quest length. Every quest, with a couple exceptions, like the crab quest, the captive crustacean, but almost all the quests follow the same formula. They're very formulaic. It's just basic, run down a very linear path. There's an occasional hidden door. There's an occasional optional path where there'll be an extra encounter that probably drops a chest. And that's about it. It's just go down a linear path, kill the monsters, kill the end boss. There's not a lot of creativity here in terms of the quest design. There's a lot of creativity in terms of the crafting system, in terms of the monster design, but in terms of the dungeon layout, not a lot. In terms of the optionals, no cool optionals here. Like, there's nothing here that's extraordinary or that they put a lot of effort into when it comes to the optionals. So all the quests are almost like very, very similar to Saltmarsh. They basically follow the same formula as Saltmarsh. I felt in many ways like I was running Saltmarsh just with a different theme, just with a prehistoric theme. I felt like that a lot running this pack because they follow the same formula as Saltmarsh. So if you look at quests from prior expansions and just compare, so for example, like Ravenloft, look at Invitation to Dinner in that quest. That quest, there's nothing remotely comparable to that in Isle of Dread. The complexity, the attention to detail, the effort put into a quest like Invitation to Dinner, it just doesn't exist in Isle of Dread. There's nothing to sink your teeth into. There's not really any learning curve with any of these quests. I had 0 issues completing them from the start. The only one that made me think a little bit is the Curse of the Captive Crustacean, which is really the only exception because I had to learn the mechanic with the crab and the ballistas. But other than that, there's nothing to learn here. There's nothing to sink your teeth into. It's just very simple, run down linear path, kill mobs. Or take a quest like Sharn, Just Business. That introduced a new mechanic with source sleds. Now, maybe you didn't like source sleds. Maybe you think that quest is annoying, but it's something new and different. Like they were creative there. Like they tried something new and different. All these quests, I feel like it's just basic linear path, kill monsters. They didn't really decide to put tons of effort into, say, like a new puzzle, a new a new maze, for example, or a new cool jumping optional. None of that stuff, exists. There's no puzzle room like you would find in, say, like the Sharn Quest Smash and Burn, for example, where there's this cool big optional puzzle room they put a lot of effort into. There's nothing like that in Isle of Dread. It's just overly formulaic and overly basic, and that's my main issue with this expansion. And I say this because I want to see more new things from the devs. I know they can do more than this. I know they can, because we've seen it before. Just some examples of some things they could do. How about a big puzzle room optional with brand new puzzles? How about some brand new puzzles? There's no brand new puzzles. There's no brand new traps, nothing like that. How about like a jigsaw puzzle? Like, create something like that. Create like a Minesweeper puzzle. I don't know. Just give me something different. How about an optional jumping room? So, for example, we've seen like in the winter event how they did this really cool jumping challenge. How cool would it be to have something like that, like the winter event, to have a jumping optional like that? Again, not required, because I don't think Mario stuff that intensive should be required. But how cool would it be to have an optional big jumping room like that? Like you see what I'm saying here? There's nothing like that in this pack. It's just so basic, minimal, formulaic. I just want to see them do more. Or how about like return a mechanic that we haven't seen in a while? Like for example, red light, green light in Deathworm. I think that was a really cool mechanic. How about let's have a dungeon where it operates off red light, green light, where you have to pay attention to the lights in the ceiling and advance and stop at different points. Like, how about something different, unique, that challenges us, rather than every quest just being run down a linear path, do an optional if you want to kill another mini boss, go to the end boss, kill him, loot chest. So some people will like this because, and maybe this is what the devs were thinking, because a lot of people like this kind of design because there's nothing to learn, you don't have to think, and it's great for zerging, and it's great for grinding because it's very farmable, very zerg worthy. You can get through these quests with zero hassle, zero things to learn. So if you're just really into grinding, like your XP, your past lives, your loot, your ingredients, you may like it for that reason. Like, I want to see them put more time into making these quests feel immersive, unique, and different. I want to see new quest mechanics instead of just, hey, it's another quest where we collect crests, or hey, it's another quest with tile puzzles in it that we've seen like every single year in quest content since 2006, it seems like. I don't know if it's been every single year technically, but I mean, we've seen tile puzzles since Korthos. Grant, I had a little bit of a rant in my Saltmarsh review a couple years ago, but I won't do that again. And they certainly didn't use them too much in this pack. There's only a very small use of them here, not nearly as much as in Saltmarsh, but still, you know what I'm saying? It's like, we really need another quest where we collect crests. Like, come on, devs, you can do better than this. You can think of more cooler stuff than this. Give me some wacky, unique quest. Give me something different. Give me something to make Isle of Dread feel unique, immersive, make it feel like something more than just quests we've run hundreds of times before with a different coat of paint on it. Also, other criticisms of the expansion is quantity. Why is it one raid? Why don't we have 2 raids? Like, we used to always get 2 raids with expansions. Like, Ravenloft had 2, Sharn had 2. Why are we now down to 1? Like, Feywild had 1, Saltmarsh was a mini, so I had 0, and then this one has 1. I just feel like with an expansion, we should get 2 raids. And if we're not going to get 2 raids, then the 12 quests, instead of being short like this, should be like really deep, a lot to sink your teeth into, longer. So like Ravenloft, for example, has not too many in terms of just the sheer number of quests, but the quests in Ravenloft are really deep. There's a lot to sink your teeth into. There's some longer ones, so you feel like you're getting more for your money. But for these, they're really short, and we're only getting 1 raid. Granted, I haven't played through the raid yet, so maybe we're not going to get, maybe it's longer, so that'll help some if it's longer. But yeah, I just want to see more. I want to see more. It feels like with just 12 short quests in 1 raid, it feels like they're cutting corners a little bit in terms of just sheer quantity. So if they're only going to do 1 raid, then maybe we should have more quests. Maybe we should have some longer quests. It's just doesn't feel like quite enough content when you compare it to, say, other expansions like Ravenloft or Sharn or Menace in the Underdark especially. It just feels like we're not getting as much for our money here. All right, so overall thoughts on the expansion, and this is with the raid having yet to be released on the live servers. Out of the 7 expansions that have been released by DDO, I'd rank it behind Ravenloft and Menace of the Underdark, but it could very well be 3rd. It's quite good, and I think when you compare it to other expansions in the game, I think you could most closely compare it in terms of quality to Sharn. I think it's right there with Sharn. I think it's better than Feywild. I think it's better than Shadowfell and Saltmarsh as well, though Saltmarsh isn't really a fair comparison because it's a mini expansion that costs a lot less. But it's Isle of Dread overall really good. There's a lot to like about this expansion. Great monster design, some of the most interesting loot, excellent crafting system, very well designed loot. One of the most compelling and best designed wilderness areas in terms of mechanics, in terms of ingredients, in terms of what incentives you have to actually engage in it. I really like the tough rare idea that they added to this game. Really like the exclusive ingredients that are exclusive to different areas of the expansion, so you're incentivized to play different parts of it. But the expansion, what's keeping it from being up there with Menace of the Underdark and Ravenloft is the quest design. It's just lacking slightly in not just the quest design, but also in the quantity of the content. If they had 2 raids, maybe a few more quests, this would be right up there with potentially the best expansion in the game. And also if the quest design was not so simple, if all the quests weren't so short, that's another thing that comes in with the quantity of content offered, is that almost all of these quests are very short. The design of the quests, as I've talked about before, overly simplistic and formulaic for my taste. And for my taste, the quest content itself does not bring enough new experiences to make this feel like as immersive as like Ravenloft was, or as immersive as, say, Menace of the Underdark was. There's just not quite enough there. So yeah, guys, that's it for my review. What do you think of the expansion? I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know what you think of Isle of Dread. I would be interested in reading your comments below. Also, if you guys don't know, I stream a lot on Twitch, so if you want to give me a follow over on Twitch at twitch.tv/AxelAlexK, I'd appreciate that a lot, as well as if you enjoyed this review, if you enjoyed my content, do me a favor, like the video, and give me a YouTube sub, because it really helps the channel out, and it doesn't cost you anything. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this review. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you all next time. Have a good one. Take care.